Hey guys, it's Monday, which means it's time for another pharmacy class with the Wild Carrot Farmstead. This is Tanya Snyder. I thought we'd talk about glycerites today. We talked about glycerites quite extensively on Instagram last week, and many of you asked to do a pharmacy class with an F on a glycerite in person so we can take it step by step. The glycerite we're going to make today would be the equivalent to Tylenol, but this is in an herbal, natural form. So what is a glycerite? A glycerite is very similar to a tincture, and if you're unfamiliar with what a tincture is, that is basically herbal medicine. You put your plant matter into a sterilized jar. With a tincture, you top it with alcohol, often vodka, sometimes Everclear if your product is really woody and heavy, because the Everclear, that ethanol in there will cut deeper into your herb and draw out the medicinal properties even better. So that is a tincture. So now that you briefly know what a tincture is, a glycerite is almost the exact same thing, other than we're swapping out alcohol for vegetable glycerin. Glycerin is a water-based product, and therefore you can put either dry herbs or wet herbs into your glycerite. That is a huge advantage because that saves so much time from forage or harvest. That way you don't have to take that extra step like you would with an infused oil and dry your product out first. You can go ahead and come right home with everything you forage, put it in your jar, and top it with glycerin, and you're good to go. You can set it and forget it, and I just love that about this. So if a tincture and a glycerite are so similar, why would you choose either a tincture or a glycerite? Well, that's personal preference sometimes, and for application purposes other times. The personal preference could be, say you are not drinking alcohol, or you're in sobriety or recovery, you abstain, it's for your children. A glycerite is often what is preferred to an alcohol-based tincture. Now, I do have to say that an alcohol-based tincture is still medicine, and we view it as such. You're only consuming a dropper full, which is about 20 to 30 drops of that tincture. So the alcohol content is the same as like an over-the-counter cough syrup. However, even knowing that, sometimes people prefer a glycerite because it just makes them feel comfortable. They don't want alcohol in the house. Whatever the reason, that could be it. For that reason, a tincture and a glycerite are almost the same as far as what it does. It draws the herbal medicinal product out of the herb, the plant being used, into a liquid form to be taken orally or sometimes topically, which brings me into like why maybe a glycerite also rather than a tincture, outside of the alcohol issue, could be maybe you want to make this for topical purposes. You can use a tincture topically. However, I don't personally prefer that in our household because they are alcohol based, and I don't think alcohol is great for the skin. For our home, as you can see on our apothecary, we make lots of tinctures, infused oils, glycerites, and because of that, I use tinctures for our internal medicine consumption, and I will often opt for glycerites for our external use, for serums, for skin healing, all different things topically. I prefer that. Now, what is advantageous, in my opinion, over a tincture to go ahead and make the glycerite is if you make a glycerite, you can use it topically or internally. Tincture tend to use only internally. So this kind of gives me dual purposes, and this is kind of one purpose, again, in our household. Before we make the glycerite we're gonna make together today, I have some already made that I want to show you. Let's see, I have this one. Oh, this is a good one. Oh, this little cutie here. All right, this is a red clover glycerite. And as you can see, the glycerin is going to be a lot thicker than alcohol as well. So again, sometimes glycerites to take internally are a little more difficult because it's a thicker consistency, similar to castor oil. We also have this glycerite, and what's really neat about them is they also often take on the color of the herb being used. This is a calendula glycerite, so it is a deep golden color. And this one, this is a butterfly pea flower glycerite, and look how beautiful that natural blue comes out in glycerite form. This one's so fun to have around because of the color. It's just so beautiful. It's good for your skin, easy to make. That's something else I love about glycerites. If you're new to herbalism, they are as simple as sterilizing your glass jar, putting the herb in it. You don't even have to dry it. Often, you know, some depend on per recipe, but often about halfway up, and then topping your jar all the way with vegetable glycerin, setting it somewhere dark and cool for 4 to 6 weeks, forgetting about it, straining it and using it. That's it. So now that you know the gist of what a glycerite is, the difference between a glycerite and a tincture, what different glycerites look like, let's go ahead and make one together. You all loved my herbal glycerite Tylenol recipe. This is a natural remedy for pain, fevers, aches, joint problems, anything that is like flu related, ache and pain related. Anytime you would reach for Tylenol, which isn't the best for you, you could swap it out for this herbal glycerite instead. If you're new to incorporating natural remedies into your house, swapping out your popular over-the-counter pain medications for herbal remedies instead is a great first step because, like I said, this is simple to do. It's fixing it and forgetting it, essentially. This one has already been infused for quite a while, probably more like 8 to 10 weeks. It's okay if they go over as long as they look good and smell good. You just made it stronger. So you at least need to infuse them for 4 to 6 weeks. If you forget about it, it's okay. It's probably actually even better. So let's take a look at this one. I'm going to come around so you can see, or let's just scooch up. I'm going to scoot towards you. Look at how red that is. This is what it'll look like when it's done. Is that not so beautiful? So I thought we could strain this one off together and then we'll make the new one. Like I mentioned, this glycerin is thick, so you have different ways to strain it. You can use a cheesecloth, you can use a reusable filter, you can use coffee filters. Other than that, it's going to take a really long time to strain off your glycerite, which is fine. If you have time, tip it over, let it strain, and like forget about it and come check on it throughout the day because it's going to take a while to get all of that glycerin to run through the filter. I like to use these little mesh lids that fit on the top and I swap it out. This is for like sprouting in mason jars, sprouting vegetables, but they work really good for apothecary strainers and a little bit faster than the traditional straining method. This stuff can also be found in our Amazon storefront under the Wild Carrot Farmstead under Home Apothecary. I try to always keep everything in there, so if you see anything, it is there. So let's go ahead and strain this beautiful red liquid off. This is perfect timing as well to be making this because you need at least 4 weeks. So if you think about it, if you make this now or in the next few weeks, this will be ready in perfect timing for 6 season if, God forbid, you get sick. We'll believe that you aren't going to get sick at all this year, but in case you do, or any of your family members do, you'll have it ready in perfect timing, and God is so awesome like that. So I'm going to scoot some of this stuff out of the way. Here is my sterilized jar. I'm going to strain it off into this jar to make it easier for me to pour into my amber bottles. When your glycerite is done, you want to store them in amber bottles because they're UV protected, and that will keep your glycerite or tincture for that much longer because UV rays will make it expire sooner. Glycerites are good for 2 to 3 years. However, I switch all of our stuff out every year with the natural season. We forage and harvest in the spring and summer. We preserve and infuse all of that in the fall for everything to be ready in the winter, pretty much. And then by the time it's ready to forage and harvest again, I'm using those up. They have been used, or I'm just switching them out for fresh. That is one way you can do it if you don't have access to a farm or nature like we do. You can keep it for 2 to 3 years, but you have to properly store it in cobalt glass, amber glass, somewhere cool, kind of dark. That will extend the longevity of that glycerite. So I'm going to pour it off here, and it still may take a while for it to come through. You can see it is a slow, I'll come back up there. It is a slow pour, kind of like honey. See that consistency? It's viscous, which means thick. So you have to have patience. It's not gonna just strain out immediately. So I'm gonna set this to strain while we start making our new one. And then this way, you'll be able to see a finished product and one we're making all in one video. Since we run a little dairy, I have access to lots of stainless steel funnels. So I'm also gonna use that and set it in my jar and just flip this over. And if I do it real carefully, it's a little precarious, but usually it works. I can just kind of let it balance over here and fill in as I work and kind of set it there and forget about it. But as you'll notice as we go on, you'll see how slow this takes, so don't worry. I will say, as a glycerite infuses, the moisture, especially if you're using a wet product, the moisture in that product is going to make the glycerite less viscous and become thinner. That is how it's supposed to work. It is okay, don't be alarmed by that either. Often in herbal medicine, we use ratios rather than recipes, and the good thing about that is once you pick up on those ratios, it's universal and it's easier to remember. So for example, a balm that I make is always 4 parts of infused oil to 1 part of beeswax. For a salve, I do 4 parts of oil to 1 part of beeswax to 1 part of a butter or a fat, mango butter, cocoa butter, shea butter. So because of that, that becomes universal. So if I want to make a calendula balm or a St. John's wort balm or a bee balm or a lemon balm, all those are the exact same recipe with different infusions. So I don't need a new recipe for all those balms because I have my portions memorized. And just like with those, we have a ratio for this recipe. It's going to be equal parts of these 4 herbs that equate to filling half your jar up. And that doesn't matter if your jar's this big or this big or this big. Those ratios are all the same. If your jar's this big, you fill it up halfway. If it's this big, you fill it up halfway. So you're gonna use equal parts to fill your jar halfway up with herb first. If you're using dry herb, you could use a little less. If you're using fresh herb, you could use a little bit more. Again, nothing is necessarily exact with plant-based crafting, so don't overthink it. Often when you're using dried matter, you're going to use less. If you're using fresh matter, you'll use more because dried matter is more condensed. So step 1 is sterilizing your jar. What is sterilizing a jar? You can run it through a sterilization or super hot setting on your dishwasher on the top rack. That would sterilize it and letting it air dry really well. Boiling water and putting them in hot boiling water, being careful not to crack your jar, so don't put cold jars in that way. That will also sterilize your jars. There's several different ways to do it. My favorite way, I have a Kangen K8. If you use that 2.5 acidic water, that will sterilize jars. If you're not starting with a sterile jar, you are running a risk of introducing bacteria or germs into your tincture or glycerite or your infused oil, making it possibly go rancid, or just introducing something icky into it that you don't want to put on your skin or ingest. So earlier I mentioned this is 4 herbs in equal parts. The herbs we're going to use is willow bark. That's our main one, and that has properties in it that help with pain, inflammation. It is in the herbalism world, my brain often usually goes right to willow bark when you're looking for something to deal with pain and inflammation. Turmeric is another one, but we're just gonna focus on these 4 today, or we'll be here extra long talking about all the different herbs that serve this purpose as well. Which has me thinking, if you don't have some of these herbs, you can leave it out or replace them for herbs that bring similar properties, like I was just talking about, to the glycerite. Do your research or check out our post on Instagram. I talk about that. What other herbs could you swap out? Again, though, we're going to focus on these 4 today so we can get through this. Also, be aware that not every herb is for everyone. There is allergies. This isn't medical advice. You need to be your own health advocate. Often willow bark and these ingredients are recommended for children 12 and older, something to keep in mind. Again, do your own research. So we're going to add the willow bark while we're at it. If you want to forage your own willow bark, when is the best time to do that? That is often in the spring with new growth. You would clip off a branch. Often white or black willow is used the most, though there's lots of varieties of willow trees out there, and you definitely can use other willows as well. But again, you see white and black used most often. You cut a branch, but you want to cut it above a node so that there can be new growth after you cut that branch. Don't cut too many branches, because then you could hurt that tree, and we don't want that. We want to be sustainable and, kind to the earth. Then you want to peel that outer layer bark off, and you're going to scrape down the inside of the bark that you peeled off, and you want the inside bark. And then it can be dried and used for later use like this, or again, you can go out and use it fresh. You can harvest it this time of year, though it's not ideal. So again, if you don't have it on hand, you can also get it from an herbal apothecary, several online shops from other farmers like us. Mountain Rose Herbs is an amazing, ethical place to get your herbs from. So if you don't raise and grow them like we do on the farm, I suggest checking them out. All right, next up is yarrow. Yarrow is the blood herb. It's good for many things. Again, today we're sticking with our Tylenol, our pain relieving, fever reducing herbal glycerite. And so we're going to use yarrow in that because it's a blood thinner. Often when you're dealing with headaches, a little blood thinning is good for that. It is also a healer and an anti-inflammatory as well. It also grows about around here. We live in the Midwest. It grows about mid-season, come June, and it stops going about July in the wild. So here's this, and I'm going to use this. A bit of the stem is okay, and the foliage and the head of the flower. And again, I'm just going to put this in. I store some of these in these bags, but I should let you know these are not plastic baggies, so don't even come for me. These are made from vegetable cellulose. And not only are they toxic-free, plastic-free, healthy for you, they decompose. Because they're made from vegetable cellulose, these baggies you can put in your compost pile and they will completely break down back into soil, into your land. How awesome is that? They have a whole line of different products from saran wraps and trash bags, to all the baggy sizes you can imagine. I'll show you it up close here. I love these. Most of the time I store our herbs in glass jars or right into an infusion, but these baggies are super handy as well. So I'm just filling my jar, again, keeping in mind those equal portions halfway up. That looks good there. I'm gonna need a chair for this one. The next one I gotta go get at the very top of our shelf is elderflower. Elderflower we sustainably harvest and forage for. At the beginning of the summer, sometimes late spring, we're here in the Midwest. Elderflower tends to blossom in the month of June roughly, where after that in late July, early August, we see the elderberries come. You want to be careful how many elderflowers you do harvest, because for every elderflower you take, you're taking the potential of those berries to form. So we take just what we need, leave the rest for the pollinators and to come back for those berries as well. Elderflower is great for your sinuses, for inflammation, for bronchitis, for cold and flu. It's also many other things. Again, that's what we're focusing on and what we're using it for today. So I'm gonna go ahead and climb up here and let me show you my elderflowers. All right. Now, this might be the one you have the hardest time finding unless you're ahead of the game and have been harvesting the elderflower this past couple months ago. You may not have it. Again, you could leave it out. You will find that yarrow has very similar properties, or better yet, if you have dried elderberries on hand, which you might this time of year, you can use that. So you could use equal amounts of dried elderberry instead of the elderflower. But here I do have plenty of elderflower, and now I'm going to put that into my jar. I avoid the stem and the little branches as much as possible because those are kind of toxic. Toxic as in kind of can give you stomach upset, not toxic like will kill you. So now we're just adding that in. Let's see. This also is an immune booster. We definitely want that immune boosting capability. Same if you decide to use the elderberries. And a remedy that is for cold, flu, fever, headache, right? And speaking of fever, our last herb we're going to use is feverfew. And feverfew is one that can easily be grown. It's beautiful. It's like it kind of looks like a little daisy. And it is excellent for fevers and breaking fevers. You could make an excellent glycerite or tincture out of feverfew alone, and that would be great. But the willow bark, included in that for pain, and the yarrow for inflammation and for your sinuses, and the elderflower to boost your immune system, they all kind of do work together nicely, even though some overlap and kind of provide the same medicinal healing. That's why I say you can kind of leave some of these out or swap them out. However, if you have access to all of this, use it. So I'm gonna go grab that over here. It's just right here. I don't have much left for the season, so this looks like probably the last batch I'll be making. I have several batches brewing already, but I saved kind of the last of what I have to make with you. So in goes the feverfew. Maybe a little bit more there. I have a little bit left, yay. All right, so we are ready to pour in our glycerin. Glycerin can be bought many places, even the grocery store, Amazon, again, herbal shops, soap supply shops. It is water-based. That's why you can put fresh herbs in this, that you don't have to necessarily dry them first because of the water base. There are many brands out there. The main thing I would make sure of is that it is food grade, that it is clean, that it is actually vegetable glycerin with no fillers or additives in it. I use Raw and Rare. I like that brand. It seems to be pretty good, pretty ethical, pretty clean. So again, lots of different brands. I would just make sure of that. No fillers, that it is what it says it is. This one, like I said, is also food grade. It's kosher certified. It's halal certified. Again, derived from vegetables. GMP certified. Colorless, odorless, okay? So we're gonna pour this in over the top. People have asked me through the years, do I have to fill my jar up to the top? You don't. However, I like to because that helps keep the matter under the glycerin or the alcohol or the oil, depending on what you're making, because you, again, run a risk if it floats above this. This is all dried, so I don't have to worry about that as much. But if this was fresh and it floats above this, I have a risk of it going bad, because if that fresh plant matter is out of the medium that's keeping it preserved, you run a risk of mold and spoiling your glycerite. So I like to fill it to the top because that lid and that fullness will help keep everything submerged. You can also use a glass weight. You could use one of those compostic baggies, since it's not plastic, and shove it kind of in the top and then put your lid on to make it kind of force everything down. You can shake it every day. No matter what, I would suggest shaking it around every day to make sure everything is under here. So we're gonna go ahead. Now, if you do halfway, the main thing is I would shake it all the time. What I just tell people is if you want to do it halfway, then you might as well just do a smaller jar. I don't understand wasting a bigger jar on something you don't need the whole jar for. I just like to maximize my space. Maybe that's the homesteader in me. So that's up to you. I think it's easier to make sure everything stays submerged by like making it as full as it can be and putting that airtight lid on it. From this point, I'm just kind of giving it some time for the glycerin to kind of soak into these dried herbs, because you'll notice once you pour it in, it's going to drop down a bit because the herbs are soaking it in. So I just kind of give it a minute before I cap it. I use a plastic lid for a lot of these because sometimes the metal lids can rust while it's infusing for the 4 to 6 weeks. If you have metal lids or want to use metal lids, put some parchment paper down first and then your lid, and that'll keep that rust from forming and maybe getting into your infusion. So at this point, I put a lid on it and I give it a little shake to help everything get worked in together, or you can stir it up. Sometimes shaking's easier. And then I'm gonna let it sit again to make sure I don't need to add more stuff to it. So while it's sitting, we can come look at this other glycerite that we've been waiting on. And look, we've been here how long? Probably 20 minutes, and we got this much. So this is gonna have to sit and kind of strain out, like I said, for several hours. Have patience because it's worth it. This is the most grueling part of the whole job, is waiting for this to strain. Once it's strained, it will go right into your dropper bottles fast too. So just have patience. I'm going to scoot a little closer to you so you can see what this looks like, and you can see what our new one looks like. Look at that beautiful red color. Oh my goodness. Now I'm going to show you this one that we just made. This is what it's going to look like. It is clear, as you can see at first, but here it is. You can see this level is dropped while we've been chatting almost an inch. So this is why you should just hang out, wait, come check on it again, and then top it off again. The last thing you need to do is label what you made. I know you may think you'll always remember what this is. I have a feeling you may not. That just comes from personal experience. Label it or don't, but you'll thank yourself later if you do. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the class. Now, hopefully you are feeling confident to go out and make this yourself and have it for your family and ready to go for if, God forbid, a cold, a flu, illness strikes, you have something to give rather than the over-the-counter, gut-harming alternative. This should be your standard. The other should be the alternative. All right, have a great morning. Thanks for joining me. I love you all. Leave a comment below if you have any questions. I'm happy to help you. If you need to know where to find something. If you're not following our Instagram account, do so, because I give daily recipes on there and how-tos. We'll see you next time.